Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon to discuss a very important topic, which is navigating dementia. My name is Heather Pope. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Like I said, I'm joining you from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I work as a Northeast campaign organizer with Compassion and Choices. I'm excited to be leading our presentation today, and I'll be starting us off with a few logistical items. You'll be able to use the chat feature as you've been utilizing throughout this webinar to communicate with each other and interact with some of the questions that I'll be posing to you as a group. If you have a question about the content of our presentation or want more information about a particular subject, you can type in the QA box, which is in your bottom menu bar. And we have staff members working behind the scenes to monitor the inbox, who will respond to your questions and share any resources that you're looking for. Lastly, this presentation is being recorded, so if you find yourself wanting to revisit this information in the future, that recording can be made available to you. With those announcements out of the way, let's get into the content and discuss how to navigate a dementia diagnosis. Next slide, please. Now, first, what makes us qualified to be providing you with this information? Compassion and Choices is the oldest, largest, and most active national nonprofit organization dedicated exclusively to improving care and expanding options at the end of life. Compassion and Choices believes in patient-directed care, where the person is in charge of making their own healthcare decisions. Also, we believe that people should be fully informed and supported by their doctors and medical team on the full range of end-of-life options. Next slide, please. Dr. Atul Gawande eloquently wrote in his book, Being Mortal, "Life is meaningful because it's a story, and in stories, endings matter. People want their lives to end in a peaceful manner." Now, if you want to take a second and message in the chat, what does a good death look like for you? What are some of the things that's important to you at the end of life? How would a good death look for some of you here in the audience today? All right, I see being in control, a peaceful and pain-free death, being with loved ones, absolutely. Not leaving important things unsaid. A good death is one where my gender identity is respected. That's really important. And there are a lot of common themes that we're seeing here: peaceful, free of pain, closure with family and friends. That's awesome. Thank you, everybody, for sharing those answers. We can move on to the next slide. So as we just saw, there are a lot of similarities in the things that we want at the end of life. And here's what most people think of as a peaceful death, like many of you indicated in the chat. People want to die at home with their loved ones largely. They want their pain and discomfort to be managed. They want their spiritual needs and values to be respected. And overwhelmingly, they want to avoid a devastating emotional impact on loved ones. Next slide, please. So why is understanding dementia important? As you'll see in the graphic on the top side of this slide, 1 in 2 older adults with Alzheimer's or some type of dementia at the time of their death, which used to be 1 in 3, but as we've had more developments in research, it's actually 1 in 2 adults now are dying with Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia, which makes knowing about this really important. 60% of Americans with dementia receive non-beneficial, burdensome medical interventions, which is something that we want to prevent. While there are ways to delay the onset or progression of dementia, there is no cure for it, which makes it all the more important to understand. And as we've discovered cures for common, potentially fatal conditions, things people used to die from, like pneumonia and strokes and influenza, human life expectancy at large has increased, which means that people are living longer and dying with older brains. So that's the reason largely that we see an increased rate in the diagnosis of dementia. Next slide, please. And dementia touches us all. This is an issue that's super relevant. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic contributed to a 17% increase in Alzheimer's and dementia deaths. And more than 6 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's disease. And by 2050, this number is projected to rise to nearly 13 million. Next slide, please. Right, so we're going to get now into some of the more details of what dementia is, how it progresses, and what symptoms might come with each of those stages. So dementia consists of a group of symptoms that progress over time. Some of these symptoms that you might see people experiencing, people with dementia have problems with thinking, memory, and reasoning. They gradually lose their ability to carry out tasks of daily living. They may also experience changes in personality, mood, and behavior. Dementia is typically defined in 7 stages, which we will go to outline in the next slide. Stage 1 is normal behavior. So this is where the person's state of wellness is before the dementia starts to take hold. We see symptoms start to appear in stage 2 with forgetfulness. Daily memory problems may appear that could look like a normal part of aging. You may see things like some difficulty finding the right words when speaking, the ability to make up for memory problems, such as substituting one word for another and still being able to kind of get by, and normal functioning in the home, community, and workplace. As we move on to stage 3, we have a more mild decline and increase of symptoms. Changes in your loved one's thinking, reasoning, and memory will appear in the 3rd stage of dementia. You may see signs of forgetfulness, difficulty finding the right words or names of loved ones, and more difficulty managing things like appointment, money, and medicines. You'll notice that someone in stage 3 of dementia may have more trouble paying attention all the time and begin to have some problems at work for those reasons. Next slide, please. All right, from stage 3 to stage 4, that's when we move into the early stage dementia with the beginning of a moderate decline. You may see your loved one forget familiar words and names of items, lose items more frequently, struggle with some daily tasks, have more difficulty driving and discomfort in unfamiliar places, some increased trouble with keeping up with finances, decreased knowledge of recent events, and increased difficulties in problem solving. So as someone who is around or has a loved one who may be experiencing dementia, what are the ways that you can help at this early stage dementia? You can begin to plan for when your loved one might have severe dementia, including using our tools to create documents that list care values and priorities at different stages of the disease. That's something that we'll go on to talk about more later on in the presentation. Something you could also do is take over driving for this individual and be there to support with everyday tasks. Next slide, please. Now, moving from stage 4 to stage 5, we see a moderately severe decline in the wellness of someone experiencing dementia. You may see your loved one experience personality changes and mood swings, repeat the same questions over and over again, have gaps in memory and may become confused about the date, where they are, or their address and phone number. They may need help eating or using the toilet, have trouble choosing appropriate clothing, or even have bladder problems. In this stage, the best way that you could support a loved one with dementia would be to help the healthcare team follow your loved one's documented care preferences, which at this point, hopefully you have discussed and are well established. You can also assist with dressing, toileting, and other daily activities, as well as responding to repeated questions with patients. Next slide, please. In stage 6, your loved one will not remember much of anything of the past and may not recognize you or family and friends, which is a difficult thing. You may see your loved one show strong personality changes and mood swings, even having delusions. They will not be able to use the toilet or get dressed without help. You may find them getting lost or wandering off, having problems with sleeping or changes in eating habits, difficulty speaking, and having bladder problems. At this point, you may need 24-hour care in the home for day-to-day activities. You can continue to support with dressing, toileting, and other daily activities. Remember to continue to try to connect with your loved one, regardless of what memory issues they may be having, and responding with patience always, whether it be repeated questions or forgetting words or names, always responding with patience. Next slide, please. Now, the last and final stage of dementia is the 7th stage, which is signified by the very severe decline. And at that point, a loved one would not remember any of the past or recognize others that they would have in a previous time. You may see your loved one lose the ability to speak, eat, or swallow. At this point, they will not be able to use the toilet or get dressed without help, not be able to walk or sit without help. They may experience a loss of language skills, lose all bladder, bowel, and other muscle control, stop walking and may be confined to a wheelchair or bed, and almost always be disoriented. Now, at this point, you will need 24-hour care in the home for day-to-day activities. Be sure to help the healthcare team follow your loved one's care preferences, because at this point, they really will not have the ability to speak for themselves. Continue to help with dressing, toileting, and other daily activities. And as we said in some of the previous slides, continue to try to connect with your loved one, regardless of the symptoms that they may be experiencing, and responding to these symptoms with patience. Next slide, please. Some additional considerations for folks who are experiencing dementia. The needs of people with dementia at the end of life are unique and require special consideration. So the steps that we just outlined are some symptoms that folks may experience in varying degrees at the end of life with dementia, but each case is unique and requires special consideration. Among those with advanced dementia, the tests and treatments given to improve health and vigor oftentimes can lead to more suffering. Hospice and palliative care have a profound impact on the quality of life for patients with advanced dementia. And lastly, patients whose proxies opt for comfort care tend to receive fewer grueling tests and treatments, such as tube feeding and hospitalization. Next slide, please. Now, in these slides, we'll go over provider and caregiver roles. These are the people who are meant to help you or the person living with dementia navigate the end of life. And there are a number of different types of care providers available to help you navigate this time. Those include medical specialists to provide treatment and comfort care. Those are physicians, whether being specialists in the area of diagnosis or a hospice or palliative care specialist, as well as nurses. Social workers are there to help you coordinate care and ensure equity of access to care. Chaplains provide spiritual, emotional, and/or religious support to the patient and interface between other care team members, the family, and community. So chaplains are there to provide support should you want them to, as well as death doulas and home funeral guides, who can provide logistical support and can facilitate rituals to help prepare patients and caregivers, the loved one of the individual with dementia who's at the end of life. People like death doulas and funeral care guides can help prepare the loved one experiencing dementia, as well as everyone around them for that time. Next slide, please. Now, these are some of the roles that a caregiver of someone with dementia should fill. Be sure to discuss your loved one's wishes early and often, not only talking about them, but documenting them. Ask the patient what would be most meaningful for them during that time and try your best to fulfill those wishes. Caregivers can help to bridge the gap between medical providers and the patient, especially during some of the end stages of dementia, as we discussed, where the person really will not have the ability to speak for themselves. So the caregiver is their main advocate, making sure that their wishes are being fulfilled at the end of life. They are also there to provide emotional and logistical support, including coordinating care, discussing hopes and fears, urging the completion of advanced directives if that hasn't been done already, and making funeral and memorial arrangements. This is a time to listen to and empower the patient, and caregivers, as I said, play a vital role in helping to ensure that a patient's wishes are honored. Next slide, please. In these few slides, we're going to discuss some of the nitty-gritty planning details and what are the exact steps that folks should take when approaching the planning of a dementia diagnosis. Next slide, please. So it's really important to be aware of your options before making decisions, right? So here are some of the end-of-life options that one with dementia could consider, and I'm going to outline each of these different bullet points. Compassion and Choices believes that everyone should have access to the full range of end-of-life care options, and each person's healthcare decisions should be respected. End-of-life options include all medical treatment interventions possible. We fully support people's choice to receive every medical treatment possible and to die in an ICU if that is what they want. But if you don't want that, and I suspect many of us do not want to die in an ICU, as you outlined in the chat earlier, many of us want to die at home around our loved ones. So we at Compassion and Choices are working hard to make sure that you have the options for a peaceful death and one that is of your choosing. Now, the second bullet point, refusing treatment or avoiding unwanted medical treatment. Every adult has the right to refuse unwanted medical treatment. This is part of every individual's right to choose what will be done to their own body. And it applies even when refusing treatment means that the person may die. Hospice includes an interdisciplinary team of caregivers providing comfort, support, and dignity to terminally ill people when medical treatment is no longer expected to cure the disease or prolong life. And this service most often takes place in the home. At the center of hospice and palliative care is the belief that each of us has the right to die pain-free and with dignity, and that our families will receive the necessary support to allow us to do so. Next, as the fourth bullet point, you'll see voluntarily stopping eating and drinking, which is known for short as VSED. Voluntarily stopping eating and drinking is a legal right for any individual who wishes to shorten their dying process by refusing nourishment orally or through a tube. It is a peaceful way to control the dying process if done under medical supervision with hospice and other palliative care support present. Palliative care refers to comfort care or non-curative care and symptom management. It also includes spiritual and emotional support. It differs from hospice as it can be done in conjunction with curative care and is not restricted to people that are terminally ill. And our last point, palliative sedation, is the continuous administration of medication to relieve severe, intractable symptoms that cannot be controlled. This unconscious or semi-conscious state is maintained until death occurs. And it's important to note also that all of these options are not mutually exclusive, and you can engage in multiple at the same time. Next slide, please. So here is what you can do to be proactive. Talk to your doctor and talk to your family. Even if you are not terminally ill, it's really important to be aware of the people around you's end-of-life preferences and make sure that they're documented as well. If you wait to talk to your doctor until you need to, it might be too late. And you do not want to be in a position of having to reestablish care with a new healthcare team during a time of crisis, where it is a difficult and emotional time where time matters. We want to make sure that the healthcare professionals you are connected to are ones who will honor your wishes. Next slide, please. Be specific and think ahead. Consider creating a video or journal that explains what you want and why. This reminds the patient, the caregivers, and loved ones of an individual living with dementia what the end-of-life priorities are. Discuss with caregivers and loved ones what would make this time meaningful for you, whether that be your favorite music, favorite poetry, different writings, whether that be the loved ones around you telling personal stories or memories of your life together, gentle massage or touch. It's important to discuss with your loved one which of these things might be helpful or preferred to them at the end of life. And lastly, complete all business and financial tasks ahead of time, which includes funeral, memorial, and burial plans. Next slide, please. Now, an advance directive. This is a really important part of the presentation. An advance directive is an important set of documents that outlines one's end-of-life priorities. That includes the living will, which outlines what you want, as well as the medical durable power of attorney, which outlines who will speak for me. A lawyer is not required to fill out an advance directive. And why is it important to have one? It explains your healthcare preferences in the event of a serious injury or terminal illness, given a circumstance where you couldn't speak for yourself. Sharing preferences before a crisis helps ensure you get the care that you want in the event that the crisis comes. Next slide, please. Now, a dementia healthcare provision is a supplement that you can add on to your advance directive. This is an additional form that advises physicians and family members of your wishes should you be unable to direct your care due to Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia. Next slide, please. But something that Compassion and Choices has formed to help assist with that is the Dementia Values and Priorities tool. This tool will help you identify your personal values so that you can stay in control. That's identifying milestones that are most significant to you, whether that may be recognizing loved ones, eating independently, maintaining your mobility, etc. Your responses will be compiled for you in a personalized dementia healthcare provision. And if we move on to the next slide, I have a little video that we're going to show to help further explain the Dementia Values and Priorities tool and how it can be useful to you.
As we have been successful as a society in having medical advances, the end result is that we are extending the length of time that people live. More and more people are suffering with dementia, 1 in 3 seniors. There hits a point when their quality of life is really pretty dismal, and most people, our survey data shows, don't want to live that way.
So many people think of advanced dementia and lingering in a state of profound mental incapacity as their worst nightmare.
People often see talking about end-of-life care as being an uncomfortable conversation. The Dementia Values and Priorities tool gives an individual the opportunity to create a customized dementia advance directive addendum that answers the question of how they would want their care preferences to change through the course of the illness.
There's a series of about 15 questions that the person answering them gets to use to ponder what I will live with and what I won't. It gave my husband and I a very practical way to look at how I wanted to live and what I wouldn't live with.
It's an enormously enriching experience to deal with reality straight on. As a result of that, our friends and family members don't have to pretend that they are seeing something they shouldn't notice. It's here, it's real, and it's a part of all of our lives now.
I think it's really important that we are addressing the diversity and equity and inclusion factors with the dementia tools, particularly because we're dealing with communities who have been disenfranchised by the healthcare system and disempowered by the healthcare system. And what the dementia values and priorities tools do is that it gives the power back to these communities. The tools allow your loved ones to advocate for your best interest when you're no longer able to advocate for yourself. I think the common misconception that we've stumbled upon is that diverse communities don't believe that the end-of-life healthcare movement is one that they belong to.
The more preparation that has been made, the easier the process is. It's always difficult to lose a loved one or to be facing mortality yourself. And so having your affairs in order and having some plans put in place really helps facilitate that process. Just as there are healthcare disparities, there are also those that are specific to the end of life. And particularly communities of color are impacted greatly by some of those disparities, most of them caused by a lack of preparation. African Americans and Latinos, for example, access hospice care at a far less rate than other communities, and for that we tend to suffer more at the end of life. What we have found doing our outreach to communities of color is that there is an educational gap around end-of-life resources and end-of-life options. And the value of the dementia tools is that it's a really simple and easy form that takes you step by step through the process.
What our research and our data shows is that when people document their preferences and figure out what it is that they want, that they're able to spend their remaining time living their life fully. They're no longer worried about what's going to happen if or when. They can focus on the here and the now.
Awesome. We can move on to the next slide. Hopefully that video was helpful to help outline the Dementia Values and Priorities tool. Again, that's available online on our website. So now we will go into some of the other resources that we can provide at Compassion and Choices that might be useful to you when navigating dementia or end of life generally. Our CNC end of life consultation program provides confidential, non-judgmental professional support around end of life planning anywhere in the country. So this is a hotline of sorts, where if you have an issue or a question about the end of life, need advice about something, you can call this number and you'll be sent to a voice mailbox where you can describe your question or your issue, and our experts will do research and prepare resources that they will contact you back and share with you to help address any questions or issues that you might be having. Next slide, please. Compassion and Choices is here to support people gathering information about their end-of-life options, and we have plenty of tools and resources to help in your path to formulate end-of-life decisions. Thinking and talking about end-of-life issues can be really difficult, and putting documents in place can seem daunting. That's why Compassion and Choices developed our end-of-life decisions guide and toolkit. You can download and print or order one to be sent to you. This guide helps people think through their priorities for end-of-life care, complete an advance directive and other forms you may need, choose a representative to speak for you if you cannot, and consider common end-of-life medical interventions so you can specify what you want or what you don't want. Next slide, please. One last resource to share with you is the Truth in Treatment initiative, which is found in truthinTreatment.org. The tools found on this website provide people who have serious illnesses with tools to help them work with their doctors to make treatment decisions that allow them to remain in control of their healthcare. The Trust Card can communicate to your specialist how to best create a trusting doctor-patient relationship with you. And the Diagnosis Decoder will help you prepare questions tailored for your needs to take with you to your next doctor's visit. By using these tools, you'll be better equipped to work with your doctors to make fully informed treatment decisions. You'll learn what to ask, how to decide, and how to explain your values and decisions to your doctor and your family members. Next slide, please. Right. That is all the content that I have for you today. But I want to thank you so much for being here and for caring deeply enough about these issues to spend your Tuesday afternoon here with us. You can see my contact information there on the screen. And if you have any questions that haven't been addressed during this presentation or would like to talk about anything that we discussed today in further detail, please feel free to give me a call or email, and we can keep that contact information on the screen. So again, thank you so much for your time, and I hope everybody here has a great night. Again, this presentation is being recorded, so should you want a recording of this presentation, you can message in the chat or send me an email directly to the address you see on the screen. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope everybody has a great night.